毎年この1月にですね、祭の神という行事、悪霊ね、疫病、そういうのが入ってこないように、というのでね。
Yoshiro Abe has been conducting this traditional New Year's ritual for decades.
正月の書き初めとかをここへみんな持ってきて、そしてそれを燃やすと。そしてみんなで、1年間ね、無事でもう過ごしたいというのでお参りするというような行事なんですよ。
Abe was born and raised in this coastal town, once known for its fishing trade. But just 5 kilometers away from his village stands a different kind of landmark. Kashiwazaki-Kariwa, the world's largest nuclear power plant. For decades, the Kashiwazaki-Kariwa nuclear power plant was the economic lifeblood for the community, providing jobs directly or indirectly to most families in the area.
柏崎消防本部に勤務していました。定年退職後は柏崎刈羽原子力発電所で
Japanese nuclear energy began in the middle of 1950s, 11 years after the defeat of World War II. In other words, peaceful use of nuclear energy is a symbol of reconstruction of Japan itself, or Japanese identity. That is the biggest reason we chose nuclear power.
Japan's first commercial nuclear reactor began operating in the mid-1960s. By 2010, 54 reactors were operating across the country, supplying 30% of the nation's electricity, with plans already underway to raise that share to 50%. Then, Fukushima happened.
The Fukushima event was caused by a huge 9.0 earthquake and really the tsunami that came afterward. And the tsunami was absolutely huge, bigger than expected. They hadn't built their seawall high enough to handle the inundation from this particular tsunami. And what it did was it flooded the fuel tanks of the backup diesel generators that are required for any Gen 2 plant to keep the cooling system running when you're offline. And that's when you get a meltdown.
その時に事故がありまして、福島第一の原発の方に行って送水活動をやっていました。私は別に死ぬというかそういう恐怖はなかったんです。何としてもやり遂げないとならないという感じで、無線関係、電話関係は全然使えない状態でした。その現場、福島第一の中ではね。だから連絡しようと思っても、もうで1週間近くかな、家族とか、職場とかそういうとこはほとんど連絡はつきませんでした。
Well, after the Fukushima disaster, all the nuclear power plants in Japan, including their largest ones, were shut down. And they will have to undergo a safety review to understand the plant's design, whether will there be adequate emergency backup systems to be available in the event of another earthquake or natural disasters. Japan is suffering from electricity shortage and is still trying very hard to restart all these existing reactors.
Learning from Fukushima, new safety upgrades have been installed at the Kashiwazaki-Kariwa nuclear power plant.
こちらは2万トンの淡水を蓄えている貯水池です。いざという時に原子炉とか使用済み燃料プールの方に淡水を供給するためのその水源を増強するために建設したものです。で、この訓練用の車両はですね、いざという時に原子炉に冷却水を供給したりだとか、 それに加えましてその原子炉建屋の開口部から何か放射性物質を含んだガスが漏れ出すような場合にですね、原子炉建屋その開口部のところに大量に水を吹きかけるシャワーのように吹きかけると、いざという時に原子炉建屋に水を吹きかけることができるようなオペレーションもできるようにしています。そういう部分も含めて、原子炉と冷却に必要な水をしっかりと確保する。それに加えて、電源対策もしっかりととって、事故の発生を防いでいくと。まず一つは津波対策を強化しております。また、津波の波力が建物に加わった時にも特に圧力がかかるところについてはしっかりと補強をして壁が壊されないようにする。7号機についてはいつでも技術的には原子炉を起動できる状況にはなっているんですけども、やはりこの先進めていくにあたっては地元の方々の理解がもっと進んでいく必要があるというふうに私ども認識してございます。いう認識のもと今理解活動に非常に力を入れてやっているところでありまして。
ここが、総合施設の刈羽村障害学習センターラピカと申します。でこれは発電所の交付金で建てた建物でございまして、もう村民本当に運動会いろんな催しに使っておりますし、ここがホールなんです。ここで講演会をやったり、万が一の災害の時には、弱者の方たちのここが避難所になるんです。住んでて、全然そういう危ないとかそういうのは感じません。不安なんかを持って生活はしていません。それは何にも不安じゃないかと言われれば絶対ってことはありませんけど、でも本当にこうしてその交付金によってこうやってラピカダの東林坊ができたりして、もう本当に私たちは充実して、もういい暮らしをさせていただいていることに本当に嬉しく思うし誇りに思っております。
今のところよほどのことがない限りもう福島第一のような事故になるということはないと思いますけど、町内に生まれた人たちとそれから他からどんどんここで家を建って、住んでる人たち、その若い人たちがこの町内にはすごく活動してもらっています。だからこの町内は活気があるいう町内になっています。だからそういう面で、またその若い人たちにいろいろまたね自分で持ってるのを教えたりなんかして言いたいと思っています。
As Japan works to make nuclear power safer for its future generations, energy demand is rising everywhere, driven in part by the rapid expansion of artificial intelligence. From massive data centers to smart devices, AI is reshaping every industry and consuming vast amounts of electricity in the process. By 2026, global demand for digital services will soar to over 800 terawatt hours. That's almost the entire annual power consumption of Japan.
A search in ChatGPT or similar takes maybe 15 times more electricity than just a simple Google search. Those computers are working a lot harder to do that AI-generated answer. So there's this expectation that we're going to have this massive new increase in just hundreds and hundreds of big data centers that all need power that has to be 24/7, very reliable. And the only thing that meets that is really nuclear.
Nuclear's dependability is proven. But it's often out of reach because plants are large, expensive, and take years to build. One nuclear technology company in Silicon Valley is trying to change that.
When we set out to start the company, the idea was, hey, let's make it easier for folks to buy what they want out of nuclear technology. And then we wanted to start at a size that was much more digestible. that transitioned very quickly and excitingly into sort of the AI data center driven space right now, where you see huge amounts of power demand coming from the data center side. A lot of these data center developments are happening in places where they don't have the power to grow, so they need to bring their own power solutions, either on site or adjacently located, so we can build these plants, power the data center operations accordingly.
Oklo calls its reactor the Aurora Powerhouse, and it is a small, modular nuclear reactor. It takes up just a quarter of the space of a traditional nuclear power plant.
We designed this system to look pretty differently from the outside. It's an industrial facility, but we encase that in something that looks different and looks kind of cool and has functional attributes to it. And the reason we wanted to do that is we wanted to change the paradigm around how nuclear needs to look. And what we wanted to do is design something that's a lot more approachable that you could actually see yourself going into. Each Aurora powerhouse is designed to produce 50 to 75 megawatts of electric power. That's really well sized to produce power for data centers, as well as a number of other industrial manufacturing facilities. That's enough power, frankly, for between 40 and 70,000 homes.
Oklo's research is accelerated through its partnership with one of America's pioneer nuclear labs. In 1951, Argonne National Laboratory built a nuclear reactor that generated enough electricity to power 4 light bulbs, marking the first time nuclear energy produced usable electricity. They are now working on ways to recycle spent nuclear fuel, material that remains highly radioactive but still holds usable energy. This could make nuclear energy generation even more sustainable.
We're working with Oklo on a few different projects for recycling used nuclear fuel and developing these technologies to a point where they could be ready for industrialization. Used fuel recycling takes fuel that has come out of a nuclear reactor and processes it to collect the elements and materials that are still useful as fuel so that they can be made into new fuel, and then consolidates the waste for disposal. So this ultimately would develop a sustainable supply chain for fuels for advanced reactors. So this is uranium in stainless steel cladding. So this is what goes into the electrorefiner. And then what comes out, this is purified uranium, and it grows in this diamond-shaped pattern.
In the United States alone, the total reserves of spent nuclear fuel would fill about 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Enough energy to power the country for over 150 years if reused.
Every year, our power plants produce enough waste to power the country for 4 years, so it's sustainable and scalable. I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the world from climate change, from dynamics occurring sort of at a global scale, but the potential of this is hard to overstate. It's a pretty easy thing to get excited about when you're working on a technology that can be the fundamental energy source for humankind for the rest of our time on this planet, without needing new physics or new discoveries to make that happen.
Saint-Paul-Trois-Châteaux, c'est une ville d'à peu moins de 10 000 habitants dans laquelle je vis depuis presque 10 ans maintenant. C'est une ville très agréable, touristique, qui propose beaucoup d'activités pour les enfants, pour les adultes. Alors, mon domicile à vol d'oiseau est à peu près à 1,5 km de la centrale du Tricastin. Après, il faut une dizaine de minutes en voiture pour se rendre sur le lieu de la centrale. Mais au-dessus de chez moi, juste au-dessus de la colline, on peut avoir une belle vue sur la centrale.
In the heart of southeastern France, the Tricastin nuclear site is one of the country's oldest and largest. Today, it supplies around 6% of the country's electricity. Construction of the site began in the early 1970s.
Why we started such a huge program in nuclear was in 1973 because of the Yom Kippur War. Middle East producer of oil decided to make embargo. We have no more oil to run the car. It was a shock for France because suddenly we realized that we were very dependent of oil. So the government decided in few weeks, without asking the people, without a referendum, without papers, we are going to build 12 reactors of 900 megawatts.
Il a conduit à créer 59 installations en tout, finalement, entre les années 77 et maintenant, la plupart ayant démarré, en fait, dans les années 80. Et donc, il y a actuellement en exploitation en France 57 réacteurs nucléaires, ce qui correspond à 70% de la production française d'énergie électrique.
La centrale nucléaire du Tricastin, les travaux ont commencé en 1974 pour les premiers couplages en 1980 et 1981. Avant la centrale, c'était plutôt 3000 habitants et aujourd'hui, on est 10 000 habitants. Il faut dire que l'emploi, c'est à peu près... et en gros, ça a engendré 12 000 emplois sur l'ensemble du territoire.
Despite being a major employer, relations between the power plant and the people have had their ups and downs. In 2008, 30,000 liters of radioactive cooling water leaked from the uranium treatment plant into the local rivers. That same year, 100 employees were exposed to radioactive particles during maintenance works. Then, in 2021, tritium, a radioactive material, was detected in the site's groundwater, raising fresh concerns about the contamination of local rivers. Routine safety reviews in the area have since been stepped up.
Construire la confiance, c'est un sujet majeur lorsqu'on parle d'installation nucléaire. Il faut bien sûr garantir que l'installation est sûre, mais en même temps, il faut apporter de la confiance pour les personnes qui vivent autour. Donc les installations font l'objet d'une surveillance, bien sûr, pour s'assurer qu'en fonctionnement normal, il n'y a pas de rejets anormaux de l'installation, mais ça ne suffit pas. Par contre, il faut pouvoir les rassurer. Et les rassurer, il y a deux actions en fait. La première action, ça va être ce qu'on appelle la transparence. C'est l'accès à l'information pour que les gens puissent se faire leur propre opinion. L'accès à l'information sur les risques, l'accès aux autorisations, l'accès aux expertises. La deuxième action, ça va être le fait d'avoir un système de contrôle de la sûreté en France qui est lui aussi transparent, qui met à disposition les travaux qu'il réalise.
Bonjour, je suis Colette B du laboratoire de la Freiamt. Je viens pour le prélèvement d'eau de ce matin.
Oui, je vous en prie, entrez.
Merci.
Mais en tout cas, l'eau est régulièrement contrôlée. Et du coup, moi, j'ai pas du tout peur et de boire cette eau et de la faire boire à mes enfants.
Maintenant, je vais remplir une étiquette pour identifier mon échantillon. Du coup, je mets simplement que j'ai prélevé de l'eau du robinet à Saint-Paul-III-Château avec la date et l'heure. Mon prélèvement pour cette analyse cet après-midi, ça va me prendre à peu près une demi-heure. Enfin, pour tout le temps de la préparation au laboratoire.
The water is checked by CRIRAD, a French NGO set up to offer independent research and vital information about radiation. Formed after the Chernobyl disaster in 1986, CRIRAD monitors radiation levels across France.
We have devices which are permanently pumping the air and analyzing the radioactivity in the air so that they would give us a signal if there is an increase of radiation in the environment. We also have portable equipment so that we can go somewhere and monitor radiation on the spot. So the question is to check that the level of radiation is as low as possible, below the official limit. This sample of water from this village at this particular time of sampling is safe.
There are added precautions, including the distribution of a key antidote in case radiation levels rise.
Bonjour, je viendrais récupérer mes pastilles, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, bien sûr. In case of an accident, the most dangerous things which is released is iodine. It's a gas, if you breathe it, it's a problem because iodine go to the thyroid and you concentrate in thyroid. To prevent that, we distribute pills around a nuclear power plant.
Parfait. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir. Moi, ça me fait pas peur aujourd'hui. J'ai moins peur de vivre ici, clairement, que de vivre en pleine ville ou dans certaines grandes villes qui sont ultra polluées actuellement. Puis je me sens en sécurité ici parce que je sais qu'en France, on a un des systèmes de surveillance les plus élaborés et les plus efficaces.
Nearby Germany has a slightly more complex relationship with nuclear energy. It was in Berlin in 1938 when scientists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann discovered nuclear fission. And at its peak, in the early 2000s, German nuclear reactors produced 25% of the country's electricity. But sentiments shifted through the decades. By April 2023, Germany pulled the plug on all its 17 remaining nuclear reactors.
We had up to 37 nuclear power plants operating in the 80s. So there was really a huge development in these decades. But then there were as well discussions about the safety and so on. You remember the 3 Mile Island accident in the United States. And then afterwards came Chernobyl. The impression of the people was that it is too dangerous. It accelerated the anti-nuclear campaigns. And the Green Party, which is today very famous in Germany, let's say, grew up with this opposition against nuclear. In 2000, the Green Minister decided to phase out of nuclear.
Das Ziel einer geordneten Beendigung der Nutzung der Kernenergie wird von den Versorgungsunternehmen aus Gründen des Primats der Politik akzeptiert.
And in 2011, at this point of the Fukushima accident happening, there was a clear public opinion. All the polls showed it. The people would like to phase out.
Germany launched an energy transition policy in 2010, focusing on a shift to renewables. Renewables now make up more than 60% of the country's power generation.
Wir sind hier auf unserem Hof in Freiamt. Wir haben eine Biogasanlage und mit dieser Anlage erzeugen wir Strom und Wärme. Wir verwerten nachwachsende Rohstoffe und auch Mist und Gülle. Hier sieht man jetzt unser Silo. Da haben wir den Mist gelagert. Die Nachbarn bringen uns das. Wir sind 4, 5 Nachbarn, die da regelmäßig ihr Mist und Gülle bringen. Und die kriegen auch nachher wieder den Dünger zurück für ihre Felder. Das ist also auch ein geschlossener Kreislauf. Von unseren Silos kommen dann die ganzen nachwachsenden Rohstoffe hier in unsere Einbringung. Diese Einbringung füttert stündlich dann unsere Bakterien, damit die gleichmäßig immer was zu essen haben und auch gleichmäßig produzieren können. Hier stehen wir auf unserem Fermenter. Darunter sind 1000 Kubikmeter Gülle und da drin sind die Bakterien. Und hier drin kann man schön sehen, wie sich da kleine Blasen bilden. Und in dieser Blase ist das Gas. Und das Gas wird gesammelt und läuft dann durch diese Rohre und wird in unserem Gasspeicher zwischengespeichert und kommt von da aus nachher in unsere Motoren. Die Motoren werden angetrieben mit dem Gas und die treiben den Generator an und der Generator erzeugt den Strom. Rein der Strom von unserer Biogasanlage versorgt über 400 Haushalte. Und ich bin mir eigentlich sicher, dass Atomkraft, wenn man alle Unkosten dazuzählt, mit Sicherheit nicht günstiger ist wie die erneuerbare Energie. Natürlich sind die Erneuerbaren am Anfang auch mal teuer, bis das alles läuft, bis alles funktioniert. Auch das mit der Speicherung von der Energie wären wir schon viel weiter, wenn von manchen politischen Richtungen das nicht ausgebremst worden wäre. Dass man jetzt die Atomkraft in Deutschland ausgeschaltet hat, sehe ich jetzt nicht so als großes Problem.
But public opinion is still mixed on Germany's energy source of choice. There's an ongoing debate between advocates from both camps, nuclear and renewables.
Now, why is renewable not so pleasantly acceptable to the national grid operators? One major challenge is the intermittency. Look at solar and wind. They produce electricity only when they have favorable weather conditions. So you have the ons and offs all the time.
To shut down these last 3 or last 6 was certainly a mistake, in my opinion. So nuclear be phased out. There's no nuclear in the electricity grid. And the electricity grid is very much dependent on the renewable energies. On the other hand, Germany was always an import nation if you look at the energy consumption. Yeah, we imported a huge amount of coal, of gas from Russia, from everywhere.
Since Germany shut down its nuclear power plants, it's come to rely even more on energy imports from its neighbors, including France, which produces most of its electricity from nuclear power. And with the Ukraine war severing Russian gas supplies, Germany's energy security has grown even more precarious.
Today, we see that we have a pretty high electricity price. I pay about 30 cents kilowatt hour, and my French friends and colleagues pay much less.
And so what's the alternative? It needs to be nuclear. Right? So what happened in Germany was that they spent billions of dollars, try to switch off the nuclear power plant, and now they're in discussion to spend another billions of dollars to try to turn it on.
Deep in northwestern English country lies Britain's oldest nuclear facility. It was here that the nation took its first bold steps into the atomic age.
The history of nuclear energy in the UK is pretty interesting because it goes back to the 1950s when we actually think about commercial nuclear power. And we did that with the first nuclear power plant on the Sellafield site, Calder Hall, which basically came online in 1956.
It is with pride that I now open Calder Hall, Britain's first atomic power station.
My own father, he worked here once the pits closed. It was a mining industry around this area. A lot of their employees moved to the Sellafield site. My father-in-law, he started at Sellafield in 1956, coming from the Merchant Navy, and carried on working here all the way up to 1991 when he retired. And then more recently, my son has just started a Sellafield apprenticeship in September, so he'll be shortly working on the site alongside me. So it's nothing unusual for people from 3 generations of my family to work at the site. It's one of the largest employers in the area.
Sellafield's nuclear reactors ceased operations in 2003. It's now a consolidated site for the storage and management of radioactive waste, both from its own past operations and from across the UK, making it one of the most complex waste cleanup efforts in the world.
You've got a legacy waste that was produced in the early years on the Sellafield site, back in the 1950s and 1960s. And there's a challenge with that waste, just in terms of treating that, because that waste is currently stored in ponds and in silos, and that waste needs to be retrieved in a very careful way and put into cement for storage going forward.
Over the years, we've designed equipment, techniques, and thankfully, today, we are removing materials from all of these high-hazard facilities. So that's what we're doing now. We're cleaning that up so it's not there for any future generations to deal with.
So we've come into one of our retrievals workstations. This is slightly outside of the pond. It's in a shielded area, which helps with protecting our operators. So remote operated vehicles have been a key piece of the last decade's worth of work in the pond. As you can see on the screen, it's a small vehicle and it's clamped onto a pipe. That vehicle will allow us to visually inspect and monitor operations within the pond.
These remote operating vehicles safely retrieve and monitor waste, a vital step before it can be processed, encapsulated, and stored for the long term.
So the wastes that were in these flasks, they've been removed and they are now in 500-litre drums, and there has been a cement grout poured on top of the drums. So we're going to go and see inside the encapsulation cave. You will see some drums in there that has got raw intermediate level waste ready to be processed through to our encapsulated product stores. So in reducing the high hazard risk that we have in our legacy ponds and silos by taking that waste from an area where it might not be the most optimum to keep it, putting it into a drum, conditioning it into a safe form, we can then control the chemistry. It keeps it safe from the people It's held in very, very secure facilities until there is a final place to dispose of it.
Buried beneath the layers of the Finnish bedrock lies Onkalo, the site of what is to be the world's first permanent storage facility for spent nuclear fuel.
The spent nuclear fuel will be finally disposed underground in the depth of 435 meters.
So there are different approaches to the long-term management of used nuclear fuel. Some countries will recycle it, and some countries will not recycle it and just simply store it and dispose of it for the long term. So the solutions that we are using in that case is what we call deep geological repositories, in which we have these highly engineered packages in which we put the used fuel and to isolate it, with concentric layers of insulation to make sure that this material remains separated from the environment from hundreds of years.
The Finnish bedrock is nearly 2 billion years old and geologically stable, making it an ideal location to be a nuclear tomb.
Most of the Finnish bedrock is quite capable and good for final disposal. Somebody has had a joke that if you would have a Finnish map and you would throw darts with your eyes closed, then almost anywhere that the dart hits, it's a suitable place. There might be fracture sites, that there might be a little bit water flow, but we are not placing any spent fuel on those fracture sites.
This is how Onkalo's storage system works. First, spent nuclear fuel is sealed in a steel canister, which is then placed inside a thick copper shell to resist corrosion. The sealed canisters are transported to the repository and lowered about 400 meters deep into the granite bedrock. Once in place, bentonite clay, known for its excellent sealing properties, is packed around the canister. When it comes into contact with natural groundwater deep underground, the clay swells, sealing any gaps and preventing more water from reaching the canister. Finally, the tunnels are filled with more bentonite clay, further isolating the canisters from the environment. As an added safety measure, sensors constantly monitor the facility for any signs of leaks or contamination.
In the beginning, there were a lot of different, crazy ideas that shooting it to the space or dumping it to the oceans. The geologists and all the people, they have decided that the best way is to put it on the bedrock, which is really, really old. You can say that choosing the site, there are different types of reasons. One is geology. One is the logistical side. And one is where the public acceptation is quite good.
I think there is a reason why nuclear waste management is much less debated and feared in Finland than maybe in any other place. And the reason is that we are the first nation completing a permanent storage repository under Finnish bedrock. I think huge majority of Finns, they trust that Onkalo project is done with a precise, careful way. I think that that's created part of the trust that people were more in favor of nuclear during past 10 years than in 1990s. And that we don't want to be relying on other nations, but also don't want to create problems for others by exporting nuclear waste, which must be taken care of very carefully.
Many people don't know there is much more radiation released in coal power plants than in nuclear power plants. The waste that is produced in solar panels or batteries. We are talking about very, very toxic materials. Those materials will never decay, and they will be toxic forever.
Radioactive waste is certainly a downside of nuclear power. I do like to sort of put it into perspective and say, if you got all of your power, not just electricity, but heat and transportation for your entire life, you would be responsible for basically a soda can of nuclear waste. And the alternative is 8 million deaths per year from particulate air pollution, potential impacts of climate change, and all the other negative things that happen with non-nuclear electricity, it's like, it's worth it. It's like, yes, it's a problem. We have to respect it. We have to handle it well, but it's still worth it.
But it only takes a tiny amount of nuclear waste material to cause massive harm. That's why it requires trust, vigilance, and a global effort to ensure nuclear energy stays safe, secure, and in the right hands.
I got to be interested in radiation since early years of my studies in the university. I'm Elena Buglova, Director of the Division of Nuclear Security at the International Atomic Energy Agency.
The International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, is an independent organization which promotes the peaceful use of nuclear energy.
This is a fight where we have to use all the available, dispatchable, CO2-free energy sources for the common challenge, which is to decarbonize our energy matrices as soon as we can.
It is the world's leading authority on nuclear safety and security, working across 180 member states to build trust and prevent disaster. For Elena, that mission is deeply personal.
Prior to joining the IAEA, I was working in my home country, Belarus, dealing with the consequences of the accident at Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which happened in April 1986. I was involved in the field missions to the contaminated areas, making measurements of food, soil, air, making reconstruction of the doses received by the members of the public, talking to the public about what does it mean for their everyday life, what is safe, what may not be safe, and how we are working to address public's concern. There is a growing demand among countries in nuclear energy. And in order for nuclear energy in countries to be sustainable, this needs to be done in a safe and secure manner. That is why the role of nuclear security is critical. It is ensuring public trust, and with this, it's ensuring public acceptance of nuclear energy.
In 2023, the IAEA launched the Nuclear Security Training and Demonstration Center. Its mission? To build a global network of nuclear security experts.
We have 28 courses right now, which we offer to countries. And those courses are covering areas from physical protection of nuclear power plant to detection and response to nuclear security events. This is when potentially sources of radiation may come to the hands of terrorist groups or criminals, which potentially may use it for malicious purposes. The goal of the agency is to assist countries to have a robust system which will allow to prevent this from happening, and if it happens, to detect in time and to respond effectively.
See there's an alarm. Now it's shooting into
Today's training includes participants from both nuclear and non-nuclear countries, learning the tools, tactics, and technologies that guard the world's most sensitive materials.
The nuclear material accounting and control is very important for all nuclear facilities, including in Indonesia. All the nuclear facilities in Indonesia can implement the managing of the nuclear material accounting and control, especially for nuclear security purpose.
So this is the one you're looking at, your real time is 0 and your dead time is 0?
This topic is essential and important for strengthening the nuclear security national level, because it is prevent any diversion of nuclear material and deter and detect and respond any unauthorized access and any theft.
As more nations choose the nuclear option, the need for a global security framework has never been more urgent. Some countries, like the UK, have taken that mission a step further.
Advance mode control room!
So part of our role within the Civil Nuclear Constabulary is we protect nuclear material on our sites that we are designated to. We need to get in there as quickly as we possibly can and recover the facility to protect nuclear material. That is part of our core role, and all of our officers will train to be able to perform that role.
The Civil Nuclear Constabulary ensures the security of all nuclear facilities in the UK. They also escort radioactive materials in transit by land and sea. The counter-terrorism element makes this one of the most demanding jobs in UK law enforcement.
They understand the intricacies of dealing with nuclear materials, and they understand the intricacies of actually having nuclear facilities and what that means. And so they are a physical presence, so they guard the facilities and the material.
This facility was built in conjunction with the site operators, fire instructors and the operational officers to try and mimic the areas that our operational officers will be going into. You'll see we've got backboards which we can use to mimic the facilities that they operate in, control panels, etc., because of the inherent risk of the areas that we're going into. We need to ensure that we are accurate in our shooting and that we can deal with any threats proportionately. We heavily invest in our officers and train our officers to be able to identify threat and risk in high-risk situations, to be able to make split-second decisions, knowing the ramifications that those decisions can make.
We have physical security, we have digital security, we have a whole variety of different aspects of security in place to protect our sites. And the CNC is a very important part of that. And the public know that, and the local community know that. They know that that's what they're there for.
If safety and security are in place, is everyone ready to live with and near nuclear power?
Now there's new talk of a new renaissance. We're starting to see energy demand increase again in many regions where it's been flat for a long time. And people are now realizing that and increasing their interest in demand for nuclear very dramatically. Nuclear is low carbon and is also able to produce energy 24/7.
The IAEA has estimated that nuclear energy will more than double by 2050. And a lot of countries are looking into deploying nuclear power to be included in their energy mix.
Pour avoir discuté avec des gens qui vivent ici, qui ont vécu toute leur vie ici, en 40 ans, donc l'âge de la centrale à peu près, la population a été multipliée par 6-7 aujourd'hui. Donc la centrale amène beaucoup de choses et des bonnes choses aussi.
特に柏崎刈羽の場合はですね、心配して生活するということは全然ありません。市内の企業では相当原発が稼働していることに稼働したことによって相当な潤っていると思います。
Obviously, nobody wants to have an accident. Perhaps 20 years ago, the industry was not very proactive, communicating on what we are doing. And we learned from those mistakes. We learned that it's essential to be transparent, to put all the information on top of the table. And I think that is helping for most people to start to understand or to feel comfortable learning about what nuclear energy is and nuclear energy isn't.
We have a climate crisis. We're doing what we can to avert the damage associated with that. The younger generation are much more interested in planet Earth and ensuring that it's going to be here for generations to come.